Walk through any major American airport, and you'll notice something curious. The big three carriers all seem to be selling the same product. Similar boarding groups, similar seat pitch, similar snack boxes, similar loyalty programs that all work more or less the same way. When one airline drops a fee, the others drop it within months. When one adds a lounge tier, the others quietly follow. This is not an accident. It is a natural behavior of a handful of dominant players who understand that competing head-on over price or amenities is a losing game for everyone involved. But there is one area where these companies cannot simply copy each other. One arena where decades of decisions, geography, and calculated risk-taking have carved out real and lasting differences. That arena is the route network, the invisible architecture where an airline chooses to fly, when and why. To understand why network design became the last true battleground, it helps to understand why the other battlegrounds closed. Airlines operating in a market dominated by only a few large competitors tend to avoid direct price wars because a fair war benefits no one except the passenger. Margins collapse industry-wide and nobody gains lasting market share. The same logic applies to onboard product. If one airline invests heavily in a superior economy class experience, competitors can usually replicate the parts that matter within a season or two, erasing the advantage before it pays for itself. Route networks, on the other hand, take years or decades to build. A hub isn't just a runway. It's fleets of aircraft positioned in the city, crews based nearby, gates leased for long term, and relationships with regional partners that feed passengers in from smaller cities. That kind of infrastructure can't be copied overnight, which makes it one of the few genuine sources of durable competitive advantage left in an otherwise homogenized industry. The foundation of nearly every large airline's network is the hub-and-spoke model. Instead of trying to fly nonstop between every possible pair of cities, an airline funnels passengers from many small markets into a handful of central airports, then redistributes them onto flights heading toward their final destinations. This is enormously efficient. A flight from a mid-sized city doesn't need enough demand to fill a plane heading directly to, say, Tokyo. It only needs enough demand to fill a regional jet heading to the hub, where it merges with dozens of other feeder flights bound for the same long-haul departure. The trade-off is convenience. Passengers connect rather than fly nonstop, and the airline's competitive fortunes become deeply tied to the geographic quality of its hubs. Not all hubs are created equal, and the differences between them explain much of the variation in strategy among competitors. Consider what makes a hub geographically strong. Ideally, it sits at a natural pinch point where large volumes of passenger traffic already want to pass through, a spot positioned between major population centers rather than off to one side. It should have room to grow, since a hub boxed in by mountains, oceans, or dense urban development eventually hits a ceiling on how many gates and runways it can support, and it should serve a substantial local market on its own, so that even flights with weak connecting traffic can still fill seats with people who simply live nearby and want to travel. Airlines that inherited or built hubs meeting these criteria tend to have durable structural advantages that are almost impossible for a competitor to erase through marketing or price cuts alone. An airline with a hub in the wrong location, however well run internally, is fighting geography itself. This is where the personalities of the major networks start to diverge. One common strategic posture treats the network as a primary competitive weapon, betting that a broader footprint and more connection options will win loyalty even in markets where raw math doesn't obviously pencil out. Airlines pursuing this approach tend to launch routes to smaller or more unusual destinations before their rivals dare to, essentially betting that demand can be created rather than merely captured. A seasonal nonstop to a mid-sized regional airport or a long-haul flight to a city most travelers have only vaguely heard of might not show up as an obvious win in existing booking data, because that data still assumes passengers are willing to connect through somewhere else. The theory behind these bets is that once a non-stop option exists, some meaningful shared travelers will restructure their entire itinerary around the convenience of flying direct, rather than sticking to whatever connection they used before. If the bet pays off, the airline effectively locks up an entire market segment before a competitor even considers entering, since the second airline to arrive in a small market rarely finds enough remaining demand to justify the investment. A second strategic posture takes the opposite view. rather than spreading resources thin across many niche routes. Concentrate overwhelming capacity into a smaller number of markets where geography already favors you, and dominate those markets so thoroughly that competitors find it unprofitable to even try. Airlines following this model often point out quite openly that their core advantage isn't a sprawling global network, but a dense regional stronghold, usually somewhere with fast-growing population centers and airports positioned squarely along the busiest domestic travel corridors. In a mid-sized city with only mediocre hub options in every direction, an airline whose hub happens to sit directly on the path between that city and the nation's biggest population centers has an almost unbeatable structural edge. It doesn't need to offer the flashiest amenities or the cheapest fares in that market. It simply needs to offer more flights on shorter and more convenient routings than anyone else bothers to. This approach extends naturally into contested regions like Latin America or island nations without a dominant homegrown carrier, where sheer scale and well-positioned hubs allow one airline to become the default option almost by geographic inevitability, without ever having to be based there. A third posture treats the network less as a weapon and more as a supporting actor, while the real competitive story is told through brand reputation, operational reliability, and customer loyalty programs. Airlines taking this approach often relegate detailed route network discussion to back pages of their own investor materials, preferring to emphasize things like on-time performance, service consistency, or premium positioning. Their networks tend to sit in the middle of the pack, not as expansive as a network-first competitor, not as ruthlessly concentrated as a hub dominance competitor, because their theory of competitive advantage doesn't require winning every regional battle. It requires winning the perception battle. Convincing travelers that flying with them, even on a slightly less convenient routing, is worth it because the overall experience is more dependable. This can be a remarkably effective strategy in the short term, since customer perception quality doesn't always track precisely with measurable differences in the actual product. But it also means such an airline's network geography sometimes contains genuine soft spots. A hub in a smaller or more constrained metro area, mountainous terrain limiting connections to nearby destinations, or direct overlap with competitors in the biggest coastal markets, where nobody has a structural edge and competition simply grinds down margins for everyone involved. International network design adds an entirely new layer of complexity, largely because long-haul flying almost never happens in isolation. Major carriers typically don't operate transatlantic or trans-Pacific routes purely on their own. They partner with foreign airlines through joint ventures that pool revenue and coordinate scheduling, effectively turning two separate companies into one combined operation across an ocean. This means an airline's international route map is shaped as much by the strengths and weaknesses of its foreign partner's hub network as by its own preferences. If a partner's major hub sits deep in the interior of a continent, an airline may find itself pushed to develop non-stop routes into the corners of that continent the partner's hub struggles to serve efficiently. Not because those corners are the most obviously profitable markets, but because they're the markets where the partnership as a whole is weakest, and therefore the markets a savvy network planner will move to shore up. In effect, an airline's international map can end up looking almost like a mirror image of its partner's blind spots, filling gaps rather than duplicating strength. This gap-filling logic also explains one of the more unusual innovations in recent network design: the rise of connector hubs built not around a home country's own city, but around a foreign airport position conveniently between an airline's existing long-haul flights and a cluster of secondary destinations its partners don't adequately serve. An airline might already operate several long-haul flights that happen to land in the same foreign city within a few hours of one another, rather than let the aircraft and crew simply sit idle overnight. That airline can schedule short regional flights departing shortly after those long-haul arrivals, timed precisely to catch connecting passengers before they scatter to competitor flights or overnight layovers. The following morning, the same aircraft returned just in time to feed the next wave of outbound long-haul departures. This kind of scheduling trick allows an airline to offer what looks, on paper, like the fastest possible itinerary to a destination its partners can't reach efficiently, all without needing to build a full-fledged hub from scratch. It's a clever use of otherwise wasted overnight aircraft time, and it lets an airline claim markets that would otherwise fall entirely into a partner's hands or into no one's hands at all. Underlying nearly all of this is a fundamental tension between using historical data and taking calculated risks. Domestic route planning benefits enormously from detailed traffic data. Airlines can see exactly how many passengers already fly between two cities via connections, and use that number to judge whether a non-stop route would likely succeed. International leisure markets, especially in smaller or less established destinations, don't offer nearly as clean a signal. A tourist who wants to visit a particular region might currently book a ticket only to the nearest major gateway city, then figure out ground transportation separately once they arrive, meaning the true demand for a more specific non-stop destination is essentially invisible in existing booking data. Airlines willing to launch routes into these blind spots are making an explicit bet that convenience itself generates demand that wouldn't otherwise show up in any spreadsheet. That if you make a destination easy enough to reach, travelers will reshape their vacation plans around that convenience rather than the other way around. This kind of route carries real financial risk, since there's no historical evidence to fall back on if the bet fails. But when it succeeds, the rewards can be substantial, because a route with no meaningful competition functions almost like a temporary monopoly. The airline can set fares with much more freedom, since travelers who want that non-stop option have nowhere else to turn. None of this happens by accident, and none of it happens quickly. A well-designed route network reflects years of institutional risk tolerance, historical mergers that determine which cities became hubs in the first place, and constant recalibration based on where fuel costs, aircraft range, and shifting travel demand are heading next. It also reflects an ongoing argument within every airline about what kind of company it wants to be. One that competes primarily through reach and audacity, one that competes through overwhelming regional dominance, or one that competes through consistency and reputation, while quietly filling in the geographic gaps left by its rivals. None of these approaches is objectively superior. Each has produced airlines that have thrived, and each has produced painful failures along the way. But together they explain why. Despite superficially identical seat maps and boarding announcements, no two major airlines actually offer the same thing at all. The real competition isn't happening in the cabin. It's happening on the map, one carefully chosen route at a time, and decisions made years before a single ticket is ever sold. It's also worth noting that network strategy doesn't stay fixed forever. It shifts in response to external shocks that reshape the economics of entire regions almost overnight. A destination that once justified a permanent hub can lose its rationale within a few years if currency exchange rates move against inbound tourism, or if a global health crisis suppresses travel demand for an extended period. When that happens, an airline with aircraft and crew already stationed abroad faces a choice: pull everything back to the home market and accept the sunk cost, or find a creative way to repurpose that stranded capacity into something newly profitable. The smarter operators tend to choose the second path, treating an underused overseas base not as a liability to be unwound, but as a foothold that can be redirected toward entirely new markets nearby. This kind of adaptive thinking is often what separates a network that merely reacts to changing conditions from one that actively exploits them, turning what looks like a strategic misstep into the seed of a genuinely new competitive advantage a few years later. Fleet economics also quietly shape which routes even become possible in the first place. Every aircraft type has a range beyond which it simply cannot fly nonstop, and even within that range, the routes closest to the aircraft's absolute limit tend to carry real operational penalties. A jet pushed near the edge of its range has to devote more of its total weight to fuel, which leaves less capacity for passengers, cargo, or both. And because carrying extra fuel itself requires burning additional fuel just to transport that weight, the efficiency of the flight degrades the closer it gets to the aircraft's outer limits. This is part why the healthiest long-haul routes tend to originate from whichever hub sits closest to the destination, rather than whichever hub might offer the most convenient connections on paper. An airline willing to operate near the ragged edge of an aircraft's capability is often signaling something important about how much it values a particular market. It is accepting worse unit economics purely for the sake of controlling a route that a hub with better range characteristics simply couldn't support as easily. Corporate travel contracts add yet another dimension entirely, because large multinational companies negotiating travel deals rarely care only about price. They care about whether their employees can reliably get from a regional office to wherever a client, factory, or headquarters happens to be, anywhere in the world, without excessive layovers eating into productive time. This gives global connectivity an outsized importance even for an airline that would otherwise prefer to focus mainly on domestic strength, since losing a major corporate account to a rival with a more convincing international map can cost far more in predictable, high-yield revenue than the cost of maintaining a modest international presence. As a result, even airlines whose core identity is built around dominating short-haul domestic corridors typically maintain at least one well-chosen international gateway, often by partnering with a foreign carrier whose own hub happens to sit in an ideal position for onward connections, rather than try to build out a competing long-haul network of their own from scratch. In the end, the network is the one part in airlines business that can't be reverse engineered from a press release or copied within a single fiscal quarter. Fleets can be repainted, loyalty programs can be redesigned, and amenities can be matched almost immediately by a determined competitor. But a hub built in the right city, backed by the right terrain, the right local population, and decades accumulated route history, is something rivals can only watch from the outside. That's why, in an industry where every airline seems to be selling nearly the same experience, the shape of the map itself remains the clearest signal of what each company actually believes about how to win.